Welcome back for part 2 of this episode. Rodney M. Cluff, author of World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow, developed a lifelong belief in the hollow Earth theory. Backed by research, scripture, and personal accounts, he claims Earth and other celestial bodies are hollow and inhabited. His book presents his findings, theories, and expedition efforts.
Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
You mentioned UFOs, flying saucers. I'm curious about your thoughts on that, because we do know that the same Admiral Byrd and a collection of military ships went after World War II down to Antarctica, and there's some claims and stories that they ran into something coming from possibly the inner earth that had high technology and kind of push them away.
Well, that's,
is this the
that's
same
a
people?
part of,
Is this the same?
That's the part of John B. Lith's book, Genesis for the New Age, that I have accepted the testimony that he had in his book about Admiral Byrd. And the first time that Admiral Byrd went to Antarctica through the South Polar opening that I know of for sure is 1946. And he went halfway through. And he determined that opening was 125 miles in diameter. The next year, in 1947, in Operation High Jump, he took with him several other airplanes, and they flew all the way through the South Polar opening, and they were met by the flying saucers of the Germans that had immigrated to the Hollow Earth. And so Admiral Byrd told his planes to fire on them.
Yeah.
And they knocked them all out of the sky except his own plane. And he told him to go turn around and go back and never come back. But before he got back to his fleet in the Antarctic Ocean, these flying saucers came up out of the ocean and was filmed by a Russian boat that had was there checking on what we were doing down there with Operation High Jump. And they sent up several planes from the aircraft carrier that we had there, and they fired on these flying saucers, but they didn't hit any of them. They knocked all of our planes out of the air. They hit the one of the ships that we had there, and it caught on fire before they dived back under the waves. But that was before Admiral Byrd got back to the ship. And the next thing we know, he's talking to a newspaper in Chile about this threat that we have if the United States has another war, we're going to have to be facing craft that can fly from pole to pole, like the flying saucers do. You know, that
That's crazy.
he realized that we had a new enemy.
Yeah. I want to get more into the structure here of the inner earth, but you bring up something that begs this question. So we have up north and other parts, we have the lost 10 tribes, and then we likely see that there's some remnant of the Nazis that tried to get away in the South Pole. There are two distinct different groups in the inner earth, is that what you're saying?
No, I think the main group is the lost 10 tribes that migrated up there 2,500 years ago. I believe that they're planning on coming back this year, and that's 2,500 years that they've been hiding themselves up in the the hollow earth of the North Country is what the scriptures call it. And it's because the compass always points north. When you're going through the North Polar opening, it keeps pointing north in the same direction, even though it looks like from our point of view, they would be going south, but it's because the magnetic field lines of the Earth come out the South Polar opening, and they go in the North Polar North magnetic pole,
Yeah.
and that causes the compass to point to their North Pole as if it's our South Pole, but it's their North Pole, and
Now,
their South Pole is our North Pole.
Yes. Yes.
But there are other peoples that live up there. I mean, we've just been talking about the Germans that immigrated there. They didn't allow, according to Lith, they didn't allow any Nazis to immigrate to the Hollow Earth because they required everybody that immigrated to the Hollow Earth to maintain peace and tranquility.
Hmm.
So
So-
they're willing to defend themselves, but they won't cause any war. They're peaceful people.
Yeah.
But then there's also the Eskimos. Now, Eskimos are actually American Indians that mixed with some Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been living up there in the Arctic from the days. The sacred records of the Nemeha that I just read this past summer talks about their people that live in the Arctic. So
Yeah.
the people that are living in the Arctic, the Eskimos, are actually American Indians. They know all about the Hollow Earth. In fact, they take their people that have medical need to the Hollow Earth to get operated on. There's this author that wrote, I think it's the same as Stephenson. He went up there and lived with the Eskimos several years. And one day he was talking about how we and our medical doctors can take one organ out of one man and put it in another one. And the Eskimo says, well, our medical doctors can do better than that. I have a relative that they put him to sleep, and while he was asleep, they took out his whole spinal cord and put in a brand new one, and because the old one had gotten broken, and then they sewed him all back up, but you couldn't even see where they even cut the incision to take out his spinal cord.
That's pretty advanced, yeah, for sure. Well, okay, so let's talk about and I'll put some graphics up, right, as we're talking about this for the final cut of this episode. But does the center of the Earth, the Hollow Earth, extend all the way from north to south? Can you travel all the way through it, or is it
Yes.
honeycombed in a way that you couldn't do that?
Oh yeah, you absolutely can. Olaf Jansen and his father, when they went into the North Pole opening in their little fishing boat in 1930, they stayed there for a year and a half, and when they were going to come back out, they put them on the Hideko River that flows into the Arctic from the Garden of Eden, and then they were thinking on coming out like they just went in through the North Pole opening, and it was the wrong time of the year. So they said, well, let's just go out through the South Pole opening. So they turned their sails, and they sailed all the way to the South Antarctica, and they came out through the South Pole opening. But the South Pole opening is mostly continent, and it just has a little byway that they can get through the ice to get out. And an iceberg fell on the boat and killed his father. But he survived. He was thrown up on top of the iceberg. And many days later, after wandering around on this iceberg, he was picked up by a Scottish whaling vessel and took him back to Sweden. So, also, when Chernobyl nuclear power plant went off and the prevailing winds caused the radiation to be taken north in through the polar opening, they later found snow with radiation from Chernobyl in the Antarctic, which proves that there's complete communication.
Yeah. Crazy. The center of the Earth has a light source. Can you talk about that for the listeners?
Olaf Jansen talks about it extensively in his book, The Smoky God. The Bible talks about it. In the beginning, Genesis says, in the beginning God created the heaven, is singular, and the earth. The earth is made up of two parts. Even in the spirit world of this earth, you have paradise and hell. So the earth is actually two parts, okay? So the light that lit up on the first day was the inner sun. Olaf Jansen says it's divided between its day and night sides. On its day side, it has a white cloud that gives off a beautiful white light, and on the dark side, it is reddish brown, and in the center of it has a big opaque area that has a whole bunch of holes in it that let bright light through, like shine like stars at night.
Yeah.
So there's also a small temperature difference between the sides, because every evening when the sun goes down, the mist comes up from the ground because of the temperature difference, and it waters the whole inner continent. They don't have thunderstorms except up near the polar openings, like we do. Most of it's just the mist that waters the ground. So the inner sun is the main source of the auroras. There's an Alaskan scientist that performed an experiment in which he flew an airplane, a 747, from Christchurch south and from Anchorage north. And he had synchronized clocks on them, and he was able to determine that the variations in the auroras at both poles happened exactly at the same time, which made him think that the source of the aurora radiation was coming from the equatorial plane of the Earth. The inner sun is on the equatorial plane.
Mm-hmm.
On my website, when you go to ourhollowEarth.com, there's an image of the Aurora Australis, and it shows that where the radiation is coming out of the Antarctic continent through the polar opening down there.
Yeah.
So although the solar wind from our outer sun, as it approaches the Earth, it deforms and puts pressure on the magnetic field of the Earth, it does not enter in the magnetic field, which is deflected by the magnetic field. And it is not powerful enough to generate the auroras. The solar wind from our outer sun is only about 800 electron volts, whereas the aurora that causes the auroras at the Arctic and the Antarctic from the Earth, there's like up in the 100,000 electron volts range. And as that radiation comes out of the polar opening, the radiation particles follow the electromagnetic field lines of the Earth in a helix around the field line, going from the south north and from the north south, and they congregate above the equator in what we call the Van Allen radiation belts. So the Van Allen radiation belts are caused by the inner sun, and the auroras are caused by the inner sun. But as a solar wind from the outer sun approaches the Earth, it does put a pressure on the magnetic field of the Earth and deforms it somewhat to cause the aurora oval to deform a little bit away from the position of the sun.
Yeah.
But a lot of the giant planets in the outer solar system, like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, all have the powerful auroras that light up their Arctic
suggesting
sky,
something in the inner planet.
And that's an indication that they are hollow and have inner suns also.
That's really cool and incredible. One question I have about the inner sun, obviously it's much smaller than in our solar system. Is it made of the same thing? That seems pretty hot if it's inside there, or is it some other plasma, something or other?
Actually, they're both electrical. Our outer sun is an electrical body. It's not nuclear, like the Orthodox scientists claim. There's a scientist named Michael Mosini. He has a website, the surface of the sun.com. And he has analyzed solar observing satellites and proved that the sun has a solid surface. So, if the sun has a solid surface, it would have to be hollow because it doesn't have enough mass to be solid all the way through.
Yeah.
And so our outer sun is also hollow. It has an inner sun, which actually is the New Jerusalem, where God is preparing to bring to earth after the earth dies and is resurrected. God is building the New Jerusalem that is spoken about in chapter 20, I think, of Revelation, where he says that there will be a new earth, a new heaven, and that is our earth when it dies and is resurrected. And then the New Jerusalem is brought from our outer sun. I have the book of a lady that was taken by two angels to the inner sun of the outer sun. And it's the New Jerusalem. She says it's built like a pyramid, a four-sided pyramid. Has a square bottom. It's 1,500 miles tall, 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles long, and has terraces all up to the top. She was taken to one of the terraces where her mansion is being built, and then she was brought back to Earth.
Well, I want to say this to the listeners as well. You're talking about the New Jerusalem, you're talking about some things here that I think people are going to say, why didn't Tony ask more questions about this? Well, a couple things. This interview would go on for a very long time if we started diving into some of those details. But a lot of what you're talking about is informed by Christianity, Mormonism, and different things, and their beliefs on some of these things. So I encourage people to take a look at those things to get some deeper details if you're interested. Anyway, I just said that, Rodney, because I think people would ask, why isn't Tony asking him more about this New Jerusalem, right? And I think that that's just a longer conversation, really, and more than what we're going to have time to do today.
So basically, the inner sun is electrical, and I claim, according to the scientific evidence of Michael Mosini, the surface of the sun.com is his website.
Yeah.
He's got a whole bunch of scientific evidence that shows that the sun our outer sun has a solid surface, which if it does, it has to be hollow.
Yeah. And that's called what's the website for that again?
The solid surface of the sun.
Solid surface of the sun.
Solid surface of the sun. So I asked him, because he also has running differences, images of our outer sun showing that it has a solid surface. It has features like mountains and valleys, and these features all rotate at the same rate as you're going around the sun. It's not like up in the atmosphere you have the black dark spots in the sun. Those are up in the atmosphere, and Galileo noticed that the ones at the equator rotated faster than the ones towards the poles. But the solid surface features of the sun all rotated the same rate from pole to pole. And so he was able to determine how fast the sun rotates. And I asked him, how long does it take to rotate? And he told me 27.3 Earth days. And I said, well, that's the same rotation rate as our moon. The sidereal rotation rate of the moon is 27.3 days. how could that be a coincidence?
Yeah.
Only if God said it that way could it be.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned this a little bit, the gravity, and how that's impacted by the hollow Earth. I do know that I caught something not too long ago where that some scientists did recognize, and it did make sense to them, that there was something rotating at the center of the Earth at a much faster pace than we would think a core would be in the current scientific theory that they have about the way the Earth is with the core center and the magma and all that. So they're baffled by that, suggesting that the inner part of the Earth is not quite what they think it is, which now opens up the door once again to the hollow Earth theory and things like that. So let's talk a minute about gravity. So people believe that, gravity is coming from the center of the Earth and things like that. And people might just initially think that if you're on the hollow Earth but the inner surface, right, that how would you not fall towards the inner sun, right? Because people just, I think, initially think, oh, the gravity is pulling you to the center of the planet. But I've heard you talk before about the gravity is housed in the crust of the Earth, that portion of the planet. Can you talk a little bit about gravity there?
Yes. Well, Orthodox science claims that all gravity accelerates to the center of the planet. And while that is true to some extent, the most of gravity of the Earth accelerates to the shell of the planet, because the shell of the planet contains like 99.99% of the mass of the planet. The inner sun is like 1/100th of 1% of the mass of the planet. So why would it be the principal center of gravity when it's so small a mass? It's the shell of the planet that has the most of the mass of the planet, and so gravity accelerates towards the mass of the shell from the outside and from the inside. However, the inside is also somewhat offset by the mass of the planet on the opposite side of the For example, if you're standing on the inner surface at the equator and you look straight up, you would see the mass of the planet over you on the other side of the Earth. So that mass above you would affect you, and it does. I made a calculation, and it's about 43% of our outer surface gravity that is what you would weigh on the inside surface. So if you weighed 100 pounds on the outer surface, you would weigh 43 pounds on the inner surface at the equator. But scientists, they teach the hollow Earth theorem in college, and they claim that everywhere inside a hollow planet you would have zero gravity, and that's because they believe that all gravity accelerates to the center of the planet and not to the shell of the planet.
Yeah.
And another thing is that they have it wrong about what gravity is. Gravity is not a pull by the Earth's mass. It's a push from space. Gravity is accelerating into the mass of the planet in all directions. And it's because in the nucleus of the atom, there's a mini black hole where the ether of space is being gathered and concentrated down to gyroscopic spinning balls of matter that then become the magnetic field of the atom. And then it is subsequently knocked out of the atom in the form of light and electromagnetic waves like radio waves, and has to continually be replaced by newly formed gyroscopic particles from the ether of space. Of course, orthodox science completely discounts the existence of the ether. But the founding father of gravity is Isaac Newton. He believed in the ether. He also believed that the gravity is an acceleration towards the nucleus of all atoms instead of a pull by the atoms.
Yeah.
And in my book, I have a couple of experiments that was given to me that prove that gravity is not an attraction or a pull by the Earth. And one of those experiments is you take a pole and you put a crossbar on it, and you hang with a rubber band. You hang two weights, and the weight at the top and the weight at the bottom is suspended by the rubber band. So you measure the distance between the two weights, and then you let them go. When you let them go, the rubber band pulls them together, because as the bottom weight is falling towards the Earth, it meets ether that it's flowing through, causing it to slow down somewhat. And as it slows down, it decreases the distance from the weight above it. Whereas if the Earth was a pull, or pulled by the Earth, even though you would let go of it, they would all stay apart to exactly the same distance on the way down. And so there's lots of evidence that indicates that the ether of space exists and is the source of what causes the gravity, the force that we call gravity.
Yeah.
And I think it explains better how gravity can work in a hollow Earth rather than the attraction theory of gravity.
Rodney, I can see people being interested in wanting to dive into that experiment, that's the explanation of that science and stuff. Is there a good place for people to go and dive deeper into that? I mean, I don't know if your book covers some of this, or if there's a reference you want to suggest where people can really look at that theory a little more deeper.
I included my scientific study on gravity as part of my book. It's probably too much for some people to read and digest, but it indicates to me that gravity is an integral part of planet theory.
Yeah. Rodney, it's funny because when I think of the inner Earth, in some of the stories I've heard, there was an old show many years ago when I was younger called The Land of the Lost. And I envision in my mind, what that might be like at the center of the Earth, with the potential of some dinosaurs and some just unique bodies and individuals down there. If it is true that the body weight would be a little less in the inside crust of the Earth because of the gravity changes or issues, maybe that opens up the door to bigger animals too, right? So I'm curious, what would the center of the Earth be like for those inhabitants? Is there a difference in the length of time that they live? Is the food different? Anything that you've read or heard or have a theory on what that might be like on the inside?
Yes, because the Earth is hollow and has less gravity on the inner surface. Everything there grows a lot bigger than it does here. Olaf Jensen said that the people of the hollow Earth were from 8 feet to 15 feet tall. The women were around 8 to 10. The men were around 9 to 15 feet tall. And completely normal persons, but giant in comparison to us. Olaf Jensen's father was 6 feet tall, and he just barely reached their belt buckles then. And the trees down there, they have a redwood forest just like we do over in California. While ours are 300 feet tall, their redwood forest trees are 1,000 feet tall.
Wow.
They have sea turtles, where our turtles could be 4 feet tall. The max, they have sea turtles at 7 feet tall and 20 feet long. They, where our elephants are quite big compared to theirs. They're like ants because they were taken to a herd of elephants that were 75 feet tall and 120 feet long, and they were taken up on a hill where they were able to look into a nest of a bird that has a 25-foot wingspan and eggs that were a foot and a half long. So they have little birds like we do here, but over the years, apparently, the Lost End tribes grew because they had a better climate there and less gravity.
Yeah. I wonder if they would be uncomfortable on this side of the crust with the difference in gravity.
Yeah, I think they're pretty healthy compared to us that wander around almost ready to kill over.
Yeah.
They have lifespans that challenge the Methuselahs of the Bible, in age. In fact, the flying saucer people that came to Lawrence Foreman out in the desert from Los Angeles says that they have the technology now to make a lifespan indefinite. They take a cell of a fetus without damaging the body of the mother or the baby and plant it in the base of an adult, one on one side and one on the other, and it rejuvenates the brain so that every 50 years they just replant this cell, and they live like aged 30 continuously.
That's amazing. So essentially, we might see the inhabitants down there to be closer to what was experienced prior to the flood, with long lives.
Exactly.
And even back then there were giants and stuff like that. So, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, Adam and Eve and their generations were giants. We find their skeletons all over the world. We find their remains of the ruins of their cities made out of huge blocks of stone that we can't even move today.
Yeah.
Cut at right angles and fitted so close together that you can't even put a paper between them. They had anti-gravity and flying saucer technology before the flood and even after. But they were really advanced scientifically, and the people that go there to live hundreds of years. Like the Lost End tribes have been there 2,500 years, but if one of them lives at 900 years old, he probably knows his grandfather, who was the first one to go there.
Yeah. That's interesting. So do you think the population down there is massive, or is there, or was that restrained a little bit?
Well, Olaf Jensen did
people.
say that they would get married when they were 75 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know how much effect that would have had. I'm sure it would have had some effect on the population.
That's interesting. Well, they got a lot done before the marriage. They waited.
Yeah, they actually spent 30 years in school, and 10 of those years they spent studying music. They love music.
Wow.
They have these great big palaces of music where the 25,000 choir members sing. They just love to sing.
So some of this information that you're talking about right now, does that come from Olaf?
Olaf Jensen's The Smoky God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I had a friend in Norway that sent me the genealogical record of Jens Jansen, where he lived in the Lofoten Islands. I found Olaf Jansen's naturalization record when he immigrated to the United States. After he came back from the Hollow Earth, he worked for 25 years after getting out of the insane asylum, and then immigrated to Bavaria, Illinois, and then he moved to Los Angeles, where he died. And I have the city record of 1908 showing his address.
Rodney, is there good pictures out there, or a way to find some pictures of these planets with where you can see the opening at the polar ends?
Well, recently somebody sent me, one of my list members sent me a photograph from NASA showing the South Pole opening without the ice. And that's on my new items page. You can look at it.
Yeah.
They don't have any comment on it, but there it is, right there. And also the report of the European Space Agency flying past Phobos, moon of Mars, with ground penetrating radar, proved that it's hollow and is 30% hollow and has an inner sun and an inner atmosphere and a magnetic field. Our moon is hollow. When we sent the Apollo astronauts to the moon, they set up seismographs on the moon and then hit the moon with like the third stage, some stage of the Apollo 13, and it made it ring for 3.5 hours, like a bell. The Earth, when it's hit by a big earthquake, the biggest earthquakes cause the Earth to ring like a bell too. The bell is hollow. It is made out of mostly metal, like I believe that the Earth and the Moon are made out of real dense metals and are actually hollow.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, in your book, there are certain areas where you talk about things that have been found. I have a few of them, and maybe we can talk just a few minutes about them. You've already mentioned the Lost 10 Tribes. You have the Garden of Eden, which you've kind of mentioned where you believe it is, but it is subterranean. How about the city of Enoch? What do you know about that?
Well, the Garden of Eden is actually on the inner surface, on the highest mountain plateau of the inner continent. It's not subterranean. It's 800 miles down from Independence, Missouri, I'm certain of, but it's on the surface of the inner planet of the planet. But the Garden of Eden. You asked about the city of Enoch.
Yeah.
Well, the city of Enoch was taken to heaven couple of thousand years before the flood. I don't remember exact date. I have it, but the Lord took it, buildings and all, to heaven. The heaven of this earth is the inner sun. So that's where I believe it is. People that have died and are medically resuscitated, as reported by some of the people that have interviewed them, say that when they die and their spirit goes to paradise, the inner sun, they say that they see the city of light, and they are told that if they go into this city, that they can't come back to this life. And I believe that city is the city of Enoch that was taken to heaven. The coming of Christ's second coming, heaven and hell will change places. Jesus will reign on earth, and so this will then be heaven here. And so the scriptures say that God will send down an angel and round up all the devil and his angels and the wicked and cast them into the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit is the hollow earth. It has an opening at the top and an opening at the bottom. It's the bottomless pit. And the inner sun will be the prison for Satan and his angels and the wicked during the millennial reign of Jesus. Well, he's reigning on the surface of the planet, both the inner and outer surface of the planet.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious
Yeah,
what your thoughts are.
When
ahead.
when that happens, then the city of Enoch will be brought out and be brought back
Mm.
to the surface of the planet.
Gotcha. I was curious about so there is, the UAP people right now would say there's a talk, some of these things that are being seen are interdimensional. Some would say they mimic or look very close to demonic type spiritual things. So what is your thought about that? And there's the spiritual side of it where it's demons and that sort of thing. They're here on Earth too, and is there any interplay or connection with the Hollow Earth there?
Or aliens that are made by us, and they're the ones that are demonic. Our military has been knocking out the air flying saucers that have been coming to Earth for decades, since 1947 when they knocked the Roswell, New Mexico flying saucers out of the air. And they captured one of the EBEs alive. These are not demonic. These are the Hollow Earth people, the people from other worlds in our solar system that inhabit other hollow worlds, including Venus, Mercury, the Moon, Mars. All the planets are inhabited within, and they have a United Federation of Planets, okay, and they're all working together with God and Jesus Christ. But when they send their flying saucers to Earth, they don't want to be knocked out of the air, so they send their EBEs, and they're live robotic entities. They know how to make their flying saucers live too, and they interact with their robotic entities. So when we knock them out of the sky, and we've been doing it since 1947, we have been reverse engineering both the entities and the flying saucers. And so those are the evil entities that are abducting people and trying to give the aliens a bad name.
Yeah. So let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. What I'm hearing is that originally, and at times there probably is visitation from somewhere else. And in some cases it might be from other civilizations in other hollow worlds. Maybe even in our own, that's the word I'm looking for, our own, even right here locally, right? But we also have military reverse engineered ships, and then there's also entities that are made by whoever the secret society is that's doing that.
Right.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah. Our craft have nuts and bolts, it seems.
No.
Their craft have no seams. Ours are dead. Theirs are alive. So that's the difference between the two, because if you want to determine if a UFO is ours or theirs, that's how you tell the difference.
Okay.
And also the evil things that they do, and the good things that the other ones do. Because the other ones, the flying saucers from the Hollow Earth and other federated planets of our solar system, they are preventing nuclear war on this planet. And they will not let us ship our nuclear missiles to their planets, nor to the moon. And which we have done, and on several occasions, and the UFOs have intercepted them and destroyed them. And the ones that are prevented from having nuclear war here Dr. Stephen Greer has several of these expert witnesses. You can go to his website and listen to them.
Yeah.
But one of them, he said that he was in an underground missile silo, and the UFOs showed up outside and shut down their missile silos. And he testified to Congress that he was of the opinion that the UFOs did not want us to have nuclear war, and they knew how to shut us down, and they have.
Yeah, that's true. Rodney, if the hollow earth theory is somehow proven tomorrow, what would be the impact and implications of science, society, and everything like that? What do you think that would mean?
It would completely change our science because as one CIA agent says, that if the American people get to the point where they believe in 100% lies, then they have completed their job. And that's what they're working on, is promoting lies. God promotes truth. The people of other planets believe in truth, and they walk and talk with God and Jesus Christ. In my book, you can learn about Dr. Frank Strangeness. He was a minister of California that was interested in UFOs. And he got a photograph from an Air Force photographer of Valiant Thor, who came from Venus, and was meeting with contactee Howard Menger out in the backside of his house in a little UFO meeting. And Dr. Frank Strangeness was going around the country showing this photograph and telling people about this man from Venus. And he goes to Washington, D.C. and gives his presentation and shows this photograph of Valiant Thor from Venus. And this lady comes up after the presentation and says, Dr. Frank Strangeness, that's very interesting what you said. Would you like to meet that man from Venus tomorrow at the Pentagon?
Wow.
And he says, well, I sure will. And she says, meet me at the front door at your hotel in the morning, and I'll take you there. And so she took him, and he had a suit coat on, and she would show him how just to open it up like this, and when you go by the guard, and they all let you through without any ID. And so every time you go through the guard, he would just go like this, and they would wave him through. And she takes him to this door in the Pentagon, and she stops at this door and says, go in there. He's in there. And she walks off down the hall, and he never sees her again. He goes in the room, and all these sergeants are working on the typewriters. He's wondering how he's going to meet this guy from Venus when this Valiant Thor walks up and says, Dr. Frank Strangeness, shakes his hand. He says, I am Valiant Thor from Venus. I am the head of the Council of the 12 on Venus. We walk and talk with Jesus every day. I am the commander of a spaceship 3 miles tall and 7 miles long. I came to Earth on my little flying saucer. Landed outside the Pentagon and asked 2 policemen to take me to your president. I was taken to your president, and Eisenhower and Nixon came in the room also, and I gave them this book, instructions on how we, of people of Venus, can help you people of Earth eliminate all sickness, death, and poverty. After looking at it with his agents for a year, he brought it back and says, I'm sorry, I can't. All my advisors say it would destroy our economy if we accepted your advice.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, it's too bad. We could have used all that. It would have changed things, wouldn't it have?
Dr. Frank Strangeness was told by Valiant Thor that their people live on the inside of their planet, just like that Venus is hollow, just like our Earth is hollow.
Yeah. Yeah, it would seem that all the planets would be like this. Seems like the normal way for them to be made. Of course, I don't know what the inside of something like Saturn looks like, or
Huge.
a Jupiter, but
Huge.
may still be, maybe the core might still be the body of a planet like that. Yeah.
Well, Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune and all the gaseous planets are actually hollow and have solid
Yeah.
surfaces. I made a calculation of the shell of each of the planets, that if they're if they all have solid surfaces, they would all be hollow. And they have inner suns because they have the solar winds coming out through their polar openings and lighting up their auroras. And they're too far away from our sun to remotely be caused by the solar wind of our sun. So all the planets are hollow and inhabited by God's people, sons and daughters. Read section 76 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Joseph Smith was told by God that all the planets are inhabited by his sons and daughters.
Yeah.
And NASA can't see them on the outside surface of any of them. So where are they? They're on the inner surface, just like Valley of the Sword said. They live on the inner surface of their planet. And it's hollow just like our planet is hollow.
Just for the benefit of the listeners, you mentioned a scriptural quote from the Doctrine and Covenants, which is part of the canon for the Mormon and LDS Church. That's where you would find that. Okay. Wonderful. Look, I've had you here a long time, Rodney, and this has been great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I really like what you said. And it's interesting how all of this is connected, not only with just, not just with this planet, but other planets. And also it's connected with Jesus Christ, and it's connected with prophecy of things coming forward. You've accounted for a lot of things here, and I think that's very interesting. And I do think it's a situation where the hollow earth, there's enough, just thinking of that itself, that people, government, and who else is keeping the fact that there's openings quiet, hiding that, not letting craft fly in those areas. That should be enough for people to really look at this and think about it. So I think it's very important. And I really appreciate the work and research that you've done, Rodney, and sharing all of this here today. I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, is there anything else that your book covers a lot? And once again, everybody, World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow. You can find that on Amazon and then also Rodney's website. There's a lot of information in there. Is there anything that you would like to still share about this whole topic that maybe a question didn't point to it?
Well, in 1975, one of the expert witnesses that Dr. Greer has on his website that you can listen to. He was a photographic expert witness, and he was called in to fix a photographic equipment at an NSA facility. And he was told by the photographic the photographic technician there that, by the way, we have just got back photographs of an alien base on the far side of the moon. NASA has never once admitted that alien base even exists. And yet I have 5 people, separate people that know, that have testified that there is an alien base on the far side of the moon, and that the moon is occupied. There was a NASA photographic lab manager named Johnson that testified on Coast to Coast AM that when Apollo 17 was going around the far side of the moon, that was the last Apollo mission to the moon. We had several more left that we never used. But as it was going around on the far side of the moon, this alien base on the far side of the moon, it was nighttime at that time on that far side of the moon, and it the base, alien base, all lit up with powerful lights. So they knew for certain that there was somebody there, right? And then over the radio came this message: you people of Earth are not welcome here on our moon. Go back to Earth and never come back. Right after Apollo 17 landed, NASA laid off about 35,000 people, and we have never gone back to the moon with men.
I've always wondered about that.
That's because we were warned off by the occupants, and they have never admitted that the moon is inhabited and that we were warned off their moon. Several of Dr. Greer's expert witnesses testify that we tried to explode nuclear weapons on the moon. The Frenchman that created all the equipment for the electronic equipment for going to the moon claimed that we were followed by flying saucers, UFOs, all to the moon. They were standing up there in the air. And there is actually air on the moon a little bit, and watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walking around on the moon. In 1990, I went to a UFO conference with my wife in Phoenix, Arizona, the only one I've ever been to. And there I met Howard Menger, contactee Howard Menger. Back in the 40s, he was just a boy when playing on his father's farm. He met this woman, the most beautiful woman he ever saw, that had landed in a flying saucer from Venus, and wanted him to help her. And he did. When he grew up, he was helping them. And then one day he says, I would like you guys to do something for me. I've helped you all these years. They said, sure. What is it? I would like to go to the moon. And they did. They took him to the moon and landed on the alien base on the far side of the moon, where Howard Menger testified that he met men and women from, just like us, from all the planets in our solar system. In the Doctrine and Covenants, there's a section that talks about Jesus visiting each planet in succession, 12 planets. We don't know if there's 12 planets in our solar system, but apparently there is. And Jesus came to ours and was crucified and resurrected from the dead and became our Savior. He is the creator of heaven and earth. He has created all the planets, including the sun, the moons, the stars, are all hollow and inhabited by his sons and daughters. I know that when we go there, we'll meet these people, and they will be peaceful, happy people. They don't want us exporting our nuclear wars to their worlds. We need to learn to be peaceful. We need to stop knocking their flying saucers out of the air and killing their EBEs. How are we going to expect to become accepted in the United Federation of Planets if we just keep knocking their flying saucers out of the air, trying to reverse engineer them and try to fight them all the time? Jesus is coming again, and he is not going to put up with all these warmongers anymore. There's going to be, that's one of the things that Larry Foreman found out from the flying saucers when he met him outside Los Angeles in 1960. They asked him to write a book, and on the cover of that book it shows the sun with a solar flare with a countdown on it. There's a solar flare that's going to hit our Earth and wipe out all the warmongers, all those who hate Jesus and hate God, and only those who are righteous will be saved by Jesus, because he's coming before the flare hits the Earth to lift us up.
Does any of your research estimate a time for some of this?
Yeah, I had an Elders Quorum president up in Utah asked me to put together my timeline.
Mhm.
So I I put together my timeline. It's on my website, and you can read it. I don't know if it's going to all turn out like I put it, but my estimate is that this year the lost 10 tribes are going to come out,
2025?
and then 2027 is when Jesus is going to have that meeting at Adamon Da'amon, where all of the prophets from all of the dispensations will deliver their keys to Adam, and he will deliver them to Jesus. And the king of the lost 10 tribes, who sits on the throne, inherited throne of David, will then ordain Jesus King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Yeah.
And that's why he will help the Jews later that year in the Battle of Armageddon to save them from extinction when he descends on the Mount of Olives, and they'll ask him, "What are these nails in your hands and in your wrists and in your feet?" And he will say, "These are the wounds I received in the house of my friends. I am the Son of God. I am Jesus Christ who was crucified." And they will weep, knowing that they killed their king and their Messiah. But then they will accept him as their Messiah and their king. And
Interesting.
the solar flare is going to happen 7 years later, because it says the Jews are going to spend 7 years cleaning up all the armaments of Armageddon for 7 years.
Hmm.
So my calculation for when the solar flare hits the Earth is 2034.
Interesting. Well, there you go, everybody. A lot here to consider. And some of these things that have been talked about are coming from a religious perspective that Rodney studies also. And I think probably visit his website and see and dive into all these different things that he does share information on. And I think that would be very helpful for people who are interested in getting more information on this. Rodney, thank you so much for being here and talking with us today. Is there anything you're working on now that people can look for in the near future? Any books or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm working on a book on the moon is hollow right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But I have some interesting information on that, and I think that some
Yeah.
people will be amazed to see.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. Well, how can people find you, your website, and any way to follow you, get your books and things like that?
Yeah, my website is ourhollowEarth.com. So
Okay.
you can visit my website there. You can purchase my book. There's a link there to my book on Amazon. It's also available in paperback and several different formats as ebooks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So once again, that book is World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow.
Right.
This has been great. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you very much also for listening in and joining us today. And the question is, what do you think? Rodney's done a lot of work to kind of flush some of this stuff out. And so you can kind of look at his book and then also look on his website and get more information. So, as we wrap up here today, and if you like this variety of strange and unexpected that we bring on the show, please subscribe, tell others about us, and share about High Strangeness. And leave a comment. We love to kind of hear what people think. Do you have a theory on this? Have you run across something that you believe also supports this theory? Now, I want to remind everybody as we wrap up today that there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality, so always keep your minds, ears, and eyes open. I mix that up. It's usually ears, eyes, and minds. And until next time, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.